It's time for the Week 7 wide receiver rankings, but before we get to that, we must, as always, recap how I did with my Week 6 DFS suggestions, as well as my love'ems and my fade'ems from Week 6. For my suggestions for DFS, at the bottom of the barrel, I usually call it, I chose Darnell Mooney at 3,700. He did lose his quarterback, so I think I get a little bit of some leeway there. He did have a couple of receptions early on, I believe. So, yeah, didn't work out, though. Mid-tier buy gave you KJ Osborne at 4,400 and Adam Thielen at 5,900. One of those really worked out well. And for the contrarian play, I gave you Jonathan Mingo at 3,500. Didn't work out. It's a contrarian play for a reason. Then I did really good for both of my love'ems and my fade'ems. For my love'ems, I gave you Adam Thielen, Zay Flowers, and Kendrick Bourne. All three of them paid off. And for my fade'ems, I gave you Marquise Brown, Tutu Atwell, and Terry McLaurin. And 2 out of the 3 of those definitely succeeded. Terry McLaurin did have not a shabby day at wide receiver 26 in half PPR. Let's get to the Week 7 rankings. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve, and these are the Week 7 rankings. These are my top 9 wide receivers. These are my must-start wide receivers, starting off with Tyreek Hill, Cooper Kupp, Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Jalen Waddle, and Devontae Adams in at wide receiver 9. Most people just give you a single projected number, which is essentially an average of what you should expect. I'm going to give you a little bit of a range from below average to an above average day for these players. What should you expect from them? So that is what you are seeing right there in the middle of the chart. And over to the left of the player names, you are seeing my player temperature gauge. This is just gives you an idea of how good the matchup is, if you should expect these guys to have a good day, or maybe they'll have a poor day for themselves. A less good than normal day, a below average day, or an above average day. That's what that gauge helps you determine. And red is good because we all like hot showers and hot food, and blue is bad because nobody likes cold pizza. I don't. And white would just be right in the middle. That's an average room temperature kind of day for those guys. There's nothing, or at least, at the very least, things are offsetting between how good that player is and how bad that matchup is, something like that. So that is the first tier. Let's move on to the second tier of wide receivers. I don't really need to justify anybody in that tier, I don't believe. And if I do, you just ask me in the comments. You know what to do here on YouTube. My second tier starts off at wide receiver 10 with Puka Nacua. I'm not going to talk about every single player, trying to keep these videos relatively succinct for you. I don't always succeed in that, so let's keep going. Puka Nacua is one subpar performance away from being a non-top 15 guaranteed kind of guy. But we still need to see a little bit more to determine exactly what the effects of Cooper Kupp returning are on this offense and for Puka. But it is a really good matchup this week, a top 5 matchup going up against Pittsburgh. My only concern would be that pass rush causing issues for Matt Stafford. Then for my next 3 wide receivers, I have Chris Olave, DK Metcalf, and Devonta Smith. And you're playing these guys given the matchups that they're in. I will say just shortly before filming, a little bit of concerning news. Devonta Smith missed practice here on Wednesday with a hamstring injury. And then at wide receiver 14, I have Mike Evans. Wide receiver 15, I have Marquise Brown. Wide receiver 16, I have Tyler Lockett. Sometimes you just got a feeling, and I got a feeling. I'd be comfortable starting Lockett this week in a game where I expect that Seattle will do their best to get this offense jump-started against Arizona and just get the juices flowing, make everybody feel a little bit better about themselves. So I'm going to give them a love them to Tyler Lockett. I love him this week. And at wide receiver 17, I have Jacoby Myers, and I'll drop him down if Aiden O'Connell ends up being named the starter. Not expecting Jimmy Garoppolo to be starting this week. But if Brian Hoyer is the starter, I feel comfortable enough with that experience and everything that I think Jacoby should be fine. There is obviously a little added risk there in that scenario. And then at wide receiver 18, we have Christian Kirk. Wide receiver 19, Zay Flowers, Amari Cooper at 20. And to wrap this tier up at wide receiver 21, I have Deebo Samuel. and he may or may not be healthy enough to play. The good news for Deebo Samuel is that Minnesota sucks against wide receivers, and I expect that this offense will not want to let up if they are clicking after the performance that they had last week. The bad is that I fear that Deebo could be used as more of a decoy, coming into this game probably not at full health. They have done that quite a few times in the past when he's been banged up. So for me, he's a fade. I would like to avoid him if I can, but there are some reasons to get excited about the matchup. So that was the second tier. Those are guys where you're probably starting them, but it depends on, several factors. There are reasons that you could be sitting some of those guys, but Tier 3 is where we get to the guys where I start to have questions, or more accurately, I start to have some concerns for them. So I'm just going to go over my primary concern for each of these guys, starting off with DJ Moore. He's going to have an undrafted rookie quarterback throwing to him. It sounds a little bit risky to me. Christian Watson in at quarterback 23, wide receiver 23. Can Jordan Love accurately deliver a deep ball to him? I don't know, but I'm going to take that opportunity against Denver to say maybe. And then at wide receivers 24 and 25, we have George Pickens and Chris Godwin, both going up against bottom 5 wide receiver matchups. And at wide receiver 26, we have Michael Pittman Jr., and Cleveland's defense is dominant. I would suspect if anyone thrives in the receiving game, it could be Josh Downs, most specifically in full PPR formats. Wide receiver 27, we have Drake London. Will he be able to keep up with his current recent success? It's not a bad matchup. He could continue this little streak that he's been on. And at wide receiver 28, we have Jordan Addison. Can he take the next step without having Jefferson to take away the attention from himself? I don't know. Versus San Francisco? I don't know. But they're actually an average matchup for wide receivers. Not too bad. At wide receiver 29, we have Calvin Ridley. It hasn't been good, and this is not a good matchup. New Orleans has been a bad matchup. And Terry McLaurin in at wide receiver 30. I know he's kind of cut off, but just deal with it. He has been okay in half of his games up to this point in the season. The New York Giants defense is only slightly above average as a matchup for wide receivers. And I suspect that in the passing game, I think they'll have a really good running game and won't need to pass a whole lot. But while they are passing, I think that it could be more of a Logan Thomas, Curtis Samuel kind of game. Play it safe, the shorter throws, no need to take too many risks against the New York Giants in order to beat them. Kind of mentality would be my best guess, but any given Sunday, right? And that brings us to my final tier, my fourth tier, which I called the a breath of fresh air, which starts off with Deontay Johnson at wide receiver 31, who oddly with that nice name that I gave this tier, is going to be a fade for me. It feels like I am ranking him too highly. At the same time, I don't know, maybe I'm not. It's not like it was great to start off the season while he was healthy. He's coming back from injury now. If he plays, he may not play this weekend. And this is a bottom 5 matchup, so there's a lot of things working against a fabulous return for Deontay if he does return. I will be rooting for him in this offense because I think that the NFL is more entertaining to watch with good offenses, but in general, a good Pittsburgh offense. It's just been pitiful to watch that offense for years now. So maybe they can get something turned around, but I'm not going to bet on it this week against the New Orleans Saints. And then Gabe Davis in at wide receiver 32 and Cortland Sutton in at wide receiver 33. At wide receiver 34, we have Romeo Doubs, and he is the reason that I didn't give my final love tag to Christian Watson. They're playing against the Broncos, baby. Feel free to play any of your Green Bay wide receivers this week and only be slightly concerned about what the end performance will be. Then we have Rashee Rice in at wide receiver 35. The schedule was a part of the reason why I've advised to getting Rashee Rice on your team this whole time. Would have liked to see him get more work, and that's the biggest risk, is that they just don't put him on the field for a whole heck of a lot of snaps so far. We haven't really seen any straight trending sign upwards or anything like that. But you'd have to think that this team sees what happens when he is on the field and the success that he's been able to have, and will try to get him out there more. Maybe. Then at wide receiver 36, Curtis Samuel. But I am betting on that, and it's a really good matchup, by the way, against the Los Angeles Chargers. Curtis Samuel, I already mentioned why I think that this game plan against the New York Giants might work in favor for Curtis Samuel. Josh Palmer in at wide receiver 37. I don't love it, but this feels about right and where I should rank him. I just always have trust issues with him. Tutu Atwell, I have in at wide receiver 38, and he's a boomer bust option with Cooper Kupp back in the lineup. this is a good matchup to bet on him having one of those boom games against Pittsburgh. They've been pretty bad against wide receivers. Kendrick Bourne going up against Buffalo feels like another game where he could have a big week. It's not the same kind of matchup. It's not the slam dunk matchup that I loved last week for Kendrick Bourne, but this has been a very banged up Buffalo defense, and that's where the opportunity comes, where he could have another good week here with some of those significant players for that Buffalo defense going down. And then Michael Thomas is going up against Jacksonville. If you want 7 points, this is how you get 7 points. And Jerry Jeudy, to wrap this little video up at wide receiver 41, yeah. That does leave one. Love him off of the table, a little bit lower ranked. I don't know where he's ranked, but so first of all, this begins with looking for a certain matchup. The Commanders have really not been good against the deep ball, so I went and I looked who they're facing, and they're facing the New York Giants. I was struggling to find another love 'em that I really felt like I should made sense to give. So this is where I landed. Initially, I'm like, well, Jalen Hyatt, the deep ball guy, but that's such a DFS play. I don't think I could ever recommend that for redraft purposes unless you're in a super deep league. Darius Slayton does pretty good with deep balls. So Darius Slayton, who we saw get a little bit of life in his step last week, could happen again. That's going to bring us to the Week 7 DFS buys, and in the bottom of the barrel / a big tournament shot kind of guy, I'm going to give you the Los Angeles Chargers, Darius Davis at $3,300. And maybe this would be a better shot to take on FanDuel since the full PPR thing is not going to work in favor of Darius Davis. But what I found interesting is that Darius Davis saw the least snaps that he has seen all year last week. And that makes no sense as to why that would have occurred to me. It was fewer than week 1, even 2 snaps compared to 3. So what I wonder is, were the Los Angeles Chargers looking ahead to their matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs, preparing to unleash their devastating deep downfield fast weapon in Darius Davis? I don't know, it's possible. Nobody else will have him on their roster. All right, I'm taking a shot on Jalen Waddle at 7,500 and Brandon Ayuk at 6,700. And for a contrarian play, I don't think people are going to be too high on Josh Downs this specific week at $4,500 versus Cleveland. There's a good reason that people probably won't be putting him on their rosters, but in full PPR formats, such as DK is, he could pay off. And so that's why he would be a contrarian play. Thank you very much for playing. Have a good one. Hope everything's going well. Titans video comes out Friday, so Evan Ingram, you can play him in most circumstances. Go right ahead and play him, and don't worry about any of the tight ends for New Orleans. Don't start any of them. All right. Thank you very much. Peace out.